Coming up, a story on a real Halloween monster encountered trick-or-treating as a kid.
Not the X-Files, our X-Files. Welcome to our X-Files Vault. Regular people talking about unexplained phenomena. UFOs. Ghosts. Cryptids. Hidden archaeology. Weird science. Our stories. Our takes. Our X-Files Vault.
My Maserati does 185. I lost my license, now I can't drive. I can't sing, but I love the line in that song, and I love the overall irony that is pretty much in every line of that song. Anyways, welcome to the Daily X. This show, I go over things in the news related to unexplained phenomena or personal stories from my own past. Today, I've got a Halloween story. I started this podcast to eventually hopefully develop an audience where I could promote some of my other stories, screenplays, and novels. At this point, there really isn't much of an audience, so we'll just keep going with what we have. So why do I write fiction? Why did I get into writing screenplays and novels and short stories? And there's a lot of reasons for that, but I think one of them is when you write fiction is you're trying to tell something true, even though it's fiction. Often something true about yourself. My life, your life, everyone's life, in reality, is actually, in many ways, a fictional narrative that we are writing our whole lives. We're writing the story of ourselves, and which is the ultimate act of creation, because we're literally creating ourselves. And you sprinkle it with facts, things that really happened, but we leave out all the stuff that doesn't fit, all the stuff that doesn't fit the narrative that we're building. To quote the eminent theorist George Costanza, it's not a lie if you believe it. Well, anyways, let's get to the story. I promise it'll be a quick show today. I talked to somebody recently who reminded me of this, and which I hadn't thought about in all these years. He said, "Do you remember the time we ran into that Oscar creature when we were kids trick-or-treating?" And it came back to me. So we were out trick-or-treating in Lawrence, and it's dark. We all got our little flashlights. We're in our costumes. There's some parents around. It was back then, a lot more kids were trick-or-treating. And we ran into this who we assume was a kid who was fishing through a garbage can. It was like one of those big old barrels, and he was half in it, fishing through it. So we decided to try to scare him. And so we got up close and we went, boo, and we banged the barrel. It was just, one of those barrels that resounds. Well, what jumped out was no kid. Something growled and jumped out and snarled at us and then ran off into the yard on two legs. Well, at least that's how we remembered it. So for us, for a few weeks, we were talking about, we called him Oscar the Grouch. You remember that Oscar creature, because from Sesame Street, the character, because we had seen this character that growled at us and ran out on two legs. Now, a rational mind would say what we really did was happen upon a raccoon. And in the dark and in our minds, it ran off on two legs when it really was just something that ran off into the yard. I'm sure that's what happened. But there are other explanations, or at least when you start trying to, again, we're talking about narrative building here, when you try to connect events. So the next year, remembering this experience inspired my costume. So I decided to become Oscar the Grouch for Halloween. It was pretty easy enough. My parents brought me to the store and we bought a big plastic barrel. Oops. We cut out the bottom and I got inside it and I wore this and now I was Oscar the Grouch. I don't think I put on any kind of makeup or a costume or anything like that. I was just a kid inside a garbage can, but yeah, if you're asking me, that's who I was. I was Oscar the Grouch. So we were starting to get a little bit older. So not quite at the end of our trick-or-treating days, but old enough where we could now range out with our parents and go further and try to get a giant haul of candy. So we started going into neighborhoods that we had been down them at various points in our life, but we had never gone trick-or-treating in. And a lot of these had 3-decker houses. So you're going up to houses where you don't know anybody who lives there. But Lawrence was actually pretty safe back then. There wasn't any sense of danger or anything like that. So we came to one house. We didn't usually tend to these 3-deckers. Usually ended up just going to the first floor. The second and third floors usually didn't have lights on or something that were really inviting you up the stairs. So you didn't really mess with stuff like that. But one time we came on this house though, where there was these lights strung up all the way up the stairs and there was a jack-o'-lantern lit up and it was clearly inviting people up this stairwell so we followed it all the way up and it went up to the 3rd floor. And we knocked at the door. The woman that opened the door was beaming, smiling, and friendly, but she looked like she had just been crying. She was trying to cover it up. And even as a kid, you can tell that. But she was all, excited to see us and she had her candy. And she was a young mother, probably, I don't know, in her 30s or something like that. And when she saw me, she goes, "Oh, Oscar the Grouch." She recognized it right away, She's like, "Can you do me a favor? Can you come in and say hi to my son just for a second? He loves Sesame Street." So I don't know, maybe because I thought I'd get more candy or maybe just because I didn't really say no to adults back then, or I don't know. So I went in and the other kids with me came in, but they waited just kind of inside the door. So it wasn't like I was all alone in the house with these people. But still, so she led me to a back room and inside, and she led me to a bedroom. And inside the bedroom was another kid. When I first looked at him, I thought he was a much younger kid because he was small. And plus maybe because she had said my kid, maybe they like Sesame Street. I don't know. But this kid was clearly quite sick. He was lying in the bed and he had an oxygen tank running connected up to his nose. And he was very weak looking. And he looked at me for a second, at my face, at my costume. But then his eyes went down to the huge bag of candy I had. So I don't think he was very impressed by the Sesame Street aspect of things. But seeing that big haul of candy that I had going, he got excited at that. He said, "What'd you score?" or something to that effect. So I think in his mother's, and he actually was maybe closer to my age than I had realized. I had led to, I think maybe in his mom's eye, he was a little bit younger, but he was definitely past the age of caring about Sesame Street. But anyway, so he asked me what I scored. He was interested in the candy. So I went over and I showed him my bag and he looked inside and I said, "Go ahead, you can take something." So he dug around and he took a couple of things out. And that was it. So I left with my friends. So for a few weeks, maybe probably not even that, maybe for a day, just the idea of the kid was in my mind, but I didn't know he was. He didn't go to my school. So I didn't know anything about him. And I'm sure it was gone from my mind. So the next year came and it was probably the last year we were old enough to do trick-or-treating. So, I don't remember what costume I wore, but again, we went ranging far and wide. And again, we came to that same house. And I don't even think I even realized it was the same house until I was walking up and we were walking up to ring the bell. And so we had to go inside the hallway, and just as before. And the woman on the first floor comes out and she's giving us candy. And I looked to the stairwell, and the stairwell going up had been lit up the year before, inviting people up, was now completely dark. And it kind of registered on me for a second, and then we left and we went about our trick or treat. Which brings me back to how we write our own narrative. I never went and visited that kid. I never really looked in to find out who he was or where he went to school. I had forgotten about him very quickly. Had forgotten, and then he was out of my mind for that whole year. And then the next year, it came back when I saw that dark stairwell with no lights in it. I'm not sure what I felt at that moment when I saw that dark stairwell, but whatever it was, it didn't linger. I went home, and that kid was gone from my memory forever, just gone. So I'll wrap up the show with that here. Please contact me with any suggestions, people from my past or anything, if you have any ideas of your own. Thank you again for your time. I appreciate it.